If you are still very focused on keywords and you're trying to rank for very specific terms, maybe just a single keyword and stuff like that, very specific phrases, and you're looking at the numbers and the search volume for a specific word, it's time to shift gears now, my friend. Google has moved on and so should you. It's time to do this shift from keywords to topics. And there's a lot of data to back this up. I mean, I have published more than 1,000 articles over the last 2 or 3 years, and I have been able to rank for keywords that's not even on the page. So what's the big deal here? It's all about that you should not be focused on specific words, but you should think more about topics. It's something that I've been talking a lot about on this channel, and the thing is that Google knows what people are asking for most of the time. So if you're typing something into Google, you don't have to have that sentence written specifically the same way on your site in order to rank for it. If you can match the intention behind the search, what we call search intent or just search intention, we'll be able to rank even without having those words on the page. So you should definitely stop trying to cram more keywords into your articles. Stop counting keywords and all those old tactics, because it's not how it works anymore. Google is telling us that 20 to 30% of all searches being made on a daily basis on Google are new searches that they have never seen before. They're not even in their database. That means that people are typing in longer and more complicated phrases when they're trying to search for something. People have gotten used to that Google will pick up the right article, even if they're coming at this question from a weird angle. That's also why you need to understand what is the intention behind a certain topic, and when you know that, you can write a much better article. And as I told you before, a funny example that I've used a couple of times on this channel, I found an article about, are ground nuts healthy? And if you know what a ground nut is, it's basically the same thing as a peanut. And I found the first article up there in Google for this search term, are ground nuts healthy, to not even contain the word ground nut. It's about peanuts, and that just goes to show that Google can understand what we're talking about, and not only sort of on a synonym basis. I had one of my own articles on a very old site that I built like more than 10 years ago, beaten recently, and the new site was writing on the same topic, but they didn't use the same word. So this is a site I have about a specific type of furniture. It's a specific type of sofa that I built a website around. I wouldn't advise you to do so today for many reasons that we can come back to, but I did have this article and I was ranking for this specific search term or this specific keyword that you can call this type of sofa. And this other site was writing on the same piece of furniture, but they called it something else, and they were able to outrank me even though they didn't even have the word on their page. That just goes to show how clever Google is today. So stop thinking about a specific keyword or a very specific way or phrase that people will be asking in Google, because as soon as you have a piece of content ranking there in Google, it will be ranking for hundreds of different search phrases or keywords or whatever you want to call it. So that also means that you'll get a lot of traffic to this article from a lot of different searches. So don't focus so much on a specific keyword.
Let's take an example here. Here's an article that I wrote for sewingmachinetalk.com, one of my sites. And as you can see, this specific article here about why is my sewing machine slow is getting around 2,578 clicks over the last 3 months. So you would assume that some major keyword would take up the vast majority of these clicks, right? But when we go to queries here, we see that the most searched phrase that is triggering my article here is sewing machine running slow, and it only get like 48 clicks. And the next one here is sewing machine slowing down, sewing machine is moving very slowly, the gnome sewing machine running slow, why is my sewing machine slow? I think that was actually what I was targeting. You see, that's only getting 19 clicks over 3 months. So when you expand it down here, you see that the list just keeps going and going and going. Even when we get down to 2 or 1 clicks per month, there's a lot of those here. So there's no need to optimize for a specific keyword or search phrase anymore.
Instead, you should put your focus on crafting the best possible article on this topic and not think so much about how many times did I mention this keyword or this keyword or this keyword phrase or whatever. And make sure that you are targeting the search intention behind the search. if you have the best piece of content, eventually Google will put you at the top position. Unless another site wrote this article already, or they have a pretty good article and they have a lot of authority and a lot of backlinks and their domain is just much older than yours. That's why I always ask you to write on underserved topics. But if you do so and you craft the best article, you don't need to count keywords. So now that you have written the content piece, you can go back and just make sure that you at least have those main keywords or whatever in the H1 and in the headline. That's the same place, and in the H2 and so on. But that's just to make sure that Google understands what you're talking about. So you can help Google a little bit, but don't count the keywords and don't try to optimize it by counting the keywords and do all those old tactics. You don't need to do that anymore. People typically go for a specific keyword or a very specific phrase because some clever keyword tool is telling them that if they write it this way or they target this specific keyword, they'd be able to get 1,000 visitors to the site in a month. And that's just not how it works anymore, because remember, if you're ranking for 100 different ways that people will type this into Google, if you're ranking across so many different search terms, it's not about how many times people will type in this word or this specific phrase. It's much more about how many people are actually wondering about this, or how many people are looking for this specific topic. So when you understand that, and that is something you cannot dig up in a clever keyword tool, nobody can tell you how many people are thinking about how to brush your dog or whatever. You have to think about how many people do you think would look for this topic. So you can get some ideas about that by typing this search phrase into Google in different ways and see if this is something that's getting discussed on forums, maybe on Yahoo Answers, or maybe on Quora, or many other places on the web. If this is something that's getting discussed all over the web on Reddit or whatever, it's definitely something where you can attract a lot of traffic. So that's a much better indicator of how much traffic you can get to your site than those numbers in the keyword tools, because they're way off many times. And also, why would you want to go for a specific keyword if you know that you'll be ranking for hundreds of keywords or phrases for this specific topic? So as I told you, write on topics and not keywords. And what is actually the difference here? So the difference is that you're not too focused on a specific word, but you try to understand this intention behind the search. And you're not writing for robots, you're not writing for Google per se, you're writing for real people. And when you start doing so, Google will pick up on all those user signals from the people browsing your site, and they'll see that your article is getting more watch time, people are not clicking as much back to Google and finding another article to read instead, and all those little signals that Google will pick up on. If you just craft the best possible answer and the best answer or article to this topic, you'll be able to outrank anybody, unless a much bigger site than yours wrote this article first or they did a pretty good job. But that's why you should always go for underserved topics, remember? And also, by not focusing so much on specific keywords, you're able to craft much better headlines. Because now that you don't have to cram these specific words into the headline, you can actually write something that people want to read and want to click on. It can be much more enticing because you don't have to stuff it with all these keywords, all these different synonyms and so on. Just forget about them, because you don't even have to put the right keyword in the headline in order to rank for it, remember? And as I've told you guys a couple of times, the headline is super important. And if you're asking me, the headline is probably the most important thing to get right when we're talking on-site SEO or on-page SEO. You need to craft a really strong and good headline every time. And this is something you should focus on. You should teach yourself this over time and just get better at it. Always be on the lookout for great headline ideas. And now that you don't have to cram in these keywords, you can think more clearly and you have more freedom, so you can craft a much better title. So I've seen a new generation of some really complicated SEO tools over the last couple of years. So I'm talking specifically about Quora and Surfer and Pop, and I've tried them. And I must say I'm not a big fan, because they let you focus on stuff like that I just warned you about. They let you focus on trying to cram in a certain number of keywords, or have this many headlines, or have this many images and so on, to just mimic all the content that's already ranking there. So first of all, you shouldn't write a lot of content that's already been written on for a new site. But if your site has matured for a couple of years maybe, and now you have some authority and you're ready to target some competitive search terms and topics, if you do find some big competitors up there and you want to beat them, I wouldn't just try to mimic what they're doing by counting all the images and so on. So the tools I was talking about before, those are complicated SEO tools that will sort of scan the first page of Google and tell you from number 1, 2, 3 and 4 in Google how many images do they have on average, how many headlines do they have, how many times did they mention this or that keyword and so on. So it's very based on numbers and not so much based on the actual content itself. But I mean, if you're able to craft a perfect piece of content and you want to look into this, by all means do so. But I looked into these tools and I didn't find them to help my content rank any better. So I wouldn't advise you to dig into those tools. I think it's just really interesting to see those new tools because there's so much data you can access. It's right at our fingertips, at least if you want to pay for tools like that, because they're pretty expensive too. But I don't do it. I just try to really understand the intention behind the search, craft the best possible answer and article to that, dig into every aspect there is. I typically just try and look away from the screen and think about, if I was to change my tires to winter tires or whatever, what would I want to know? And then I would put all that in the article if it was about how to change your tires to winter tires or whatever. If you want to know exactly how I do topic research, how I find these topics that I can rank a brand new website with, you definitely have to watch this video that I'm linking to up here. I walk you through every step of my topic research process, at least for a new site. And I show you exactly how I find topics to write on without paying and using complicated SEO tools. I'm just using the data that Google is showing us right inside their search engine. So check out that video and give this video a thumbs up if you liked it, and subscribe to my channel as always. I'll see you guys next time. Bye.